Most people try to get above-average grades in order to go to a good college and get a good job. Some succeed, while others struggle to excel academically. But over the course of history, a small but powerful group of individuals have broken the scale of human intelligence. Today, we're looking at the top 5 smartest people in the world. James Maxwell is widely regarded as one of the greatest scientists of any era. His work on the theory of electromagnetism makes him the father of modern physics, and he also made fundamental contributions to mathematics, astronomy, and engineering. In 1931, on the centenary of Maxwell's birthday, Albert Einstein described Maxwell's work as the most profound and the most fruitful that physics has experienced since the time of Newton. Maxwell's ideas also ushered in other major innovations of 20th century physics, the quantum theory. His description of electromagnetic radiation led to the development of the ultimately unsatisfactory law of heat radiation, which prompted Max Planck's formulation of the quantum hypothesis, i.e., the theory that radiant heat energy is emitted only in finite amounts, or quanta. The interaction between electromagnetic radiation and matter, integral to Planck's hypothesis, in turn has played a central role in the development of the theory of the structure of atoms and molecules. James Clerk Maxwell was born on June 13, 1831, in Edinburgh, Scotland. Having a keen intellect from childhood, he had one of his geometry papers presented at the Royal Society of Edinburgh during his adolescence. By 16, he'd enrolled at the University of Edinburgh, pursuing a fervent interest in optics and colour research. He studied there for 3 years and eventually attended Cambridge University's Trinity College, graduating in 1854. In 1856, aged 25, he was awarded Edinburgh's highest prize in mathematics, the Straighton Gold Medal, and in the same year, he was appointed to the chair of natural philosophy at the University of Aberdeen, where he stayed for 4 years. During this time, he formulated and published his brilliant analysis of how Saturn's rings could be stable for a long time. It was this insight that has since caused many to consider Maxwell to be the key influence on physics between Newton and Einstein, and to rank alongside both in overall importance. It was never officially measured, but most people estimate Maxwell's IQ was between 190 and 205. Though he isn't a household name in the same way as Newton or Einstein, this Scottish scientist is easily one of the most intelligent people of all time. Isaac Newton is considered one of the most important scientists in history. Even Albert Einstein said that Isaac Newton was the smartest person that ever lived. During his lifetime, Newton developed the theory of gravity, the laws of motion, which became the basis for physics, a new type of mathematics called calculus, and made breakthroughs in the area of optics, such as the reflecting telescope. Newton was born into a Puritan family in Woolsthorpe, a small village in Lincolnshire, England, on 25 December 1642. Isaac's father, a farmer, died 2 months before Isaac was born. When his mother Hannah married the 63-year-old Barnabas Smith 3 years later and moved to her new husband's residence, Isaac was left behind with his maternal grandparents, who taught him to read and write. When Newton arrived in Cambridge in 1661, the movement now known as the Scientific Revolution was well advanced, and many of the works basic to modern science had appeared. His natural philosophy lectures based their courses on Aristotle's incorrect ideas from ancient Greek times. This was despite the fact that 25 years earlier, in 1638, Galileo Galilei had established a new scientific basis for the physics of motion, with his masterpiece, Two New Sciences. Newton began to disregard the material taught at his college, preferring to study the recent and more scientifically correct works of Galileo, Boyle, Descartes, and Kepler. In 1687, Newton published his most important work called The Mathematical Principles of Natural Philosophy. In this work, he described the 3 laws of motion, as well as the law of universal gravity. This work would go down as one of the most important works in the history of science. It not only introduced the theory of gravity, but defined the principles of modern physics. Newton died on March 31, 1727 in London, England. Today, he is considered one of the most influential scientists of all time, alongside greats such as Albert Einstein, Aristotle, and Galileo. His IQ is estimated to be between 190 and 200, making him the 4th smartest person in history. With an estimated IQ of between 180 and 220, Leonardo da Vinci is considered to be the 3rd smartest person in history. Leonardo da Vinci was the epitome of the Renaissance man. He was a genius, a polymath, and a pioneer in fields as diverse as anatomy and hydrodynamics. Leonardo invented the tank, the helicopter, the flying machine, the parachute, and the self-powered vehicle. Undoubtedly, He was a man ahead of his time. Da Vinci showed his gift at a very young age. He's considered to be one of the best painters of all time. Two of his works, the Mona Lisa and the Last Supper, are debatably the most famous paintings of all time. Virgin of the Rocks was another masterpiece which was painted by Da Vinci. Among his drawings, Vitruvian Man is regarded as the cultural icon. The Virgin and the Child with St. Anne is another example of his famous drawings. He was trained in Florence in the 1470s, when the workshops of some major artists not only took on art in every kind of medium, but also tasks that we would now classify as engineering, both civil and military. His master, Andrea del Verrocchio, was famed chiefly as a sculptor, but was also responsible for the soldering and erection of the great copper ball on top of the dome of Florence's cathedral. This brought the young engineer into direct contact with the lifting and construction devices of the great Filippo Brunelleschi, the architect of the dome. Leonardo's famous efforts to devise various kinds of flying machines were directed by the emulation of nature. Not literally to imitate a bird, but to apply the principles of bird flight to endow man with the capacity to fly in his own way. His genius lay in his aspiration to create a second nature in the world, his dual mastery of engineering design and natural law. And no one ever drew machines with more attention to reality. The mental sculpture that he conducted in his mind was transmitted onto the paper with total conviction. He knew that such portraits of devices did not necessarily clarify all the details of construction, and needed to be amplified with drawings of the individual parts. For clarity of his vision and the numerous disciplines that he excelled in, Da Vinci is deservedly considered one of the smartest people ever. Albert Einstein was a German-born physicist who developed the special and general theories of relativity and won the Nobel Prize for Physics in 1921 for his explanation of the photoelectric effect. Einstein is generally considered the most influential physicist of the 20th century, and his name is often used as a synonym for genius. Einstein would write that two wonders deeply affected his early years. The first was his encounter with a compass at age 5. He was mystified that invisible forces could deflect the needle. This would lead to a lifelong fascination with invisible forces. The second wonder came at age 12 when he discovered a book of geometry, which he devoured, calling it his sacred little geometry book. Contrary to popular belief, young Albert was a good student. He excelled in physics and mathematics, but was more a moderate pupil in other subjects. However, Einstein rebelled against the authoritarian attitude of some of his teachers and dropped out of school at 16. He later took an entrance exam for the Swiss Federal Polytechnic School in Zurich, and while his performances in physics and math were excellent, his marks in other areas were subpar, and he did not pass the exam. The aspiring physicist took additional courses to close the gap in his knowledge and was admitted to Swiss Polytechnic in 1896, and in 1901 received his diploma to teach physics and mathematics. In 1905, often called Einstein's miracle year, he published 4 papers in the Annalen den Physik, each of which would alter the course of modern physics. From 1909 to 1916, Albert Einstein worked on a generalization of his special theory of relativity. The results of his efforts were published in March 1916 in the paper The Foundation of the General Theory of Relativity. This theory investigates coordination systems that experience acceleration relative to each other, and also the influence of gravitational fields to time and space. Whereas the special theory of relativity was still intelligible to the layman, this did not apply to the general theory of relativity. This would prove to be his most defining work, and he is still regarded for the theory of relativity more so than his other achievements, of which there are many. His brain was kept intact, and his IQ is estimated to be between 205 and 225. Johann Wolfgang von Goethe has often been seen as one of Europe's big cultural heroes, comparable to the likes of Shakespeare, Dante, and Homer. He excelled in a wide range of areas. He wrote many poems. He was a huge hit as a novelist and made scientific contributions in physiology, geology, botany, and optics. He was also a diplomat, fashion guru, a senior civil servant, and head of a university, a fine artist, an adventurous traveler, the director of a theatre company, and the head of a mining company. With an estimated IQ between 210 and 225, many people consider him to be the most intelligent person in history. Goethe was educated with his sister at home by tutors until he was 16. His father had very definite ideas about his education and intended that Goethe should follow the pattern he himself had pursued as a young man, studying law and gaining experience at the Supreme Court of the Holy Roman Empire in Wetzlar. He is a giant in German and world literature. In fact, he coined the term Weltliteratur and spoke Greek, Latin, French, English, and Italian. Aside from its quality, the sheer volume of work during his 82-year lifetime is impressive. Among other works, Goethe wrote a worldwide best-selling novel, volumes of poetry, and several dramas, including his masterwork, Faust, a massive 2-volume drama that was not entirely finished by the time of the poet's death. Goethe also dabbled in painting and the science of the theory of color, although his greatest achievements by far were in literature. He is considered by many to be the greatest genius of all time.